Shalom. Today's Daf Yomi is Shabbos Daf Kuf Lamed Hey Shabbos 135, and today's Daf Yomi Gemara discusses the following idea about those times where a person is not supposed to circumcise their child on Shabbos on the 8th day. So says Rabbi Asi, Kol she'imo tmei leda, any time where a woman who gives birth, and we know that when a woman gives birth, she typically is what's called tumas leda, that blood that comes out of her is blood that it's called dam leda, and she's not allowed to be with her husband, biblically speaking, for that period of time. So we're going to say that anytime a woman is tumas leda, meaning it's a typical birth, then nimo lishmona, then the baby should be circumcised on the 8th day, even when it's Shabbos. But in a situation where the mother is not tamei leda, and Rashi says, what does that mean? Where the baby is not delivered through the womb, but rather the baby is delivered via C-section, and so therefore a woman is not tumas leda. Rashi gives a second example. It's if the woman gives birth when she's not yet Jewish, and then she converts the next day. Then under those circumstances, we do not wait. According to Rabbi Yossi, we don't wait for the child for the 8th day, but we circumcise the baby immediately. In those circumstances, ein nimo lishmona, we don't circumcise the child on the 8th day, as it states, Isha ki tazriya v'yalda zachar v'tama. Woman who is tazriya, she gives birth and then she is tamei. Ubayom hashmini yimol basar arla. So then on the 8th day you give the baby a bris. So we see from here that the circumcision is connected to the tumas leda for the woman becoming tamei from what's called dam leda. So it says Abaye to Rabbi Asi, Doros Harishonim Yochicho, the earlier generations from the time of Abraham, they're going to disprove you, because Abraham he circumcised Isaac on the 8th day, and that was before there was any such concept of tumas leda. There was no concept. Sarah wasn't tamei leda. She'eni mo tmei leda, because we know that in that case Sarah was not tmei leda, v'nimo lishmona, and yet Isaac was circumcised on the 8th day. So says Rabbi Asi Tabaya, yes, that's true, but it was before Matan Torah. That was not the case. The Torah, once the Torah was given, then we have a different law. Niskad shahalacha. Once the Torah is given, we say it's a new halacha, and so therefore, that once the Torah was given, we say it's connected to tumas leda. When the woman is tameah from having given birth, then we say in the normal manner or the typical manner, then we're going to say that the baby indeed will be circumcised on the 8th day. So says the Gemara back to Rabbi Asi, is this really the case? V'ha'imar, we learned Yotzei Dofen, a baby is born via C-section. Umisha yeshlo shtei arlos, or a baby who has two foreskins. So under those circumstances, Rav Huna v'Rav Chia barav Chad Amar Mechalon Olavas HaShabbos, Chad Amar Emechalon. One says you do desecrate the Shabbos. I mean, you override the Shabbos to give him the circumcision. One says you don't. Ad Kan Lo Pligi, says our Gemara, El Chal Olavas HaShabbos. They're only arguing about whether or not you're Mechal the Shabbos for this baby, whether you can override the Shabbos. Avol Shmona Vaday Malinole, but the implication is that for sure on the 8th day you would circumcise him. So the Gemara says, no, that's not what we're talking about. Gemara is saying Haba Ha Talia, that they're both connected. The position that says that you violate the Shabbos says also you have to do the circumcision on the 8th day. The position that says you don't violate the Shabbos is going to say you don't have to do the circumcision on the 8th day. And the Gemara goes on for that discussion. But the basic principle of the idea is that a baby that's born Yotzei Dofen seems to be the case that you don't violate the Shabbos. And indeed, as IVF Bris writes, that a baby that is born via C-section, you do not give the baby a bris on Shabbos, but he clarifies that that's only if it's a mamish, a real C-section, but not just where you cut a little bit, like you sometimes the area where the baby is being delivered vaginally needs to be enlarged. So that's not what he's talking about, but he's talking about a real C-section. And so the Chazon Ish points out that in Yoredei Siman Kuf Nun Daled Sifkat and Daled, that today, and this was when the Chazon Ish was writing almost 100 years ago, that today circumcisions are much more common, and today they're even more common than they were back then. And so therefore we have to, he says, really emphasize to the moles that they need to be very very careful that they don't give a bris on Shabbos to a baby who's born via C-section. And so therefore, the Chazon Ish wrote that before I went to he says that he said, and he made the Beis Din in Vilna publicize this, that anybody who's born via C-section, they have to be very careful to publicize that we don't circumcise such a baby on Shabbos. And the Sefer Bris and the Mincha Shlomo wrote that not only do we not give a bris to somebody who was born via C-section on Shabbos, but also we go in a step further, and it's also based upon the fact that the pasuk says Isha ki tazriya, which means that only if the baby is conceived in the quote-unquote natural manner, because it's based upon the word zera, that if the baby is conceived in that manner, only under those circumstances does the baby get a bris on Shabbos. But if the baby is circumcised in what we call like a IVF, in vitro fertilization, or in the Gemara's terms, ba'ambati, then under those circumstances, the Nishmas Avram says that you should not circumcise he brings down that you should not circumcise such a baby on Shabbos. So really, if the baby is conceived via IVF, or if the baby is born via C-section, under those circumstances, the bris should not push off the Shabbos.